Dustin WESSA's first visit to Korea was back in 2005. Now he's receiving attention globally as a traditional Korean alcohol sommelier. He appeared in a few documentaries promoting Korea and our cuisine. In October 2018, he completed the traditional Korean liquor sommelier certificate program. In January 2019, he also completed the distiller master program. We'll hear from Dustin WESSA about how he fell for Korea and traditional Korean alcohol on today's Heart to Heart. Today's guest is someone who promotes traditional Korean alcohol to the world. Joining us today is Dustin WESSA, a traditional Korean alcohol sommelier who has many stories to share with us. Hello and welcome to Heart. It's great to have you joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, wonderful. I've got a whole bunch of questions waiting to be asked. But first of all, how long has it been since you first came to Korea? I know it's been quite a while.
It's been a while, and obviously it's unexpected, but Korea has this charm. And then you find yourself sitting here in this chair thinking, it's been 15 years. Wow.
15
About
years.
15. I can barely remember, but yeah, it's been a while.
Did you stop counting?
I stopped counting about 7 years ago. So.
Okay, so it's been about 15 years, at least 15 years since you came to Korea. But what brought you to Korea in the first place 15 years ago?
I came here originally to study. I was studying Korean history and pretending I was studying Korean language. Which it took me a while to get it, but I think I'm doing all right. So that's what brought me here originally.
Okay. So as a student, you came to Korea.
As a student, yes.
I know you speak Korean very well. You're very fluent in Korean. You're just being modest.
I can hold my own.
So that was quite a while ago. And although you came to Korea as a student, you did work as a chef, right? And then you made that switch from chef to a traditional Korean alcohol sommelier.
Right.
So could you maybe briefly tell us about that?
It seems like a drastic shift, but even when I was a cook, I ran my own place for a couple years. And then, you know, when you talk about cookery, there are just a few things that are staples. One of them is the cooking itself. One of them is the ingredients. One of them is kind of the show of it, the service aspect of the industry. And then there's the business side. And I don't have a head for numbers. I don't know how much money I don't have in my bank account right now. I just ignore the whole thing. Cookery, I wasn't terrible at it, but yeah, I was very interested in it and I enjoyed it. But definitely not 3 Michelin star level. I don't have the potential to be that chef. But I was always very much interested in the ingredients and experimenting. So from that basis, if you can imagine, being that interested in ingredients and a lot of the things I was interested in were wild ingredients. And I thought, I still got to play around with this ingredient because I'm finding them, they're very valuable. And I wanted to make it work. So I thought, what if I throw this into one of my makgeollis and see if the bitterness takes, if I can get that to. So continuing with the experimental, then I was brewing alcohol. This is 8-9 years ago, and as it just happened, I like to nerd out. I like to study. I really do. I still like studying, and that it just got to a point where it's like, okay, I need to take the leap. And start studying the history, start studying the masters that create these alcohols. And I thought, okay, let's just jump into the pool and let's get certified. Let's see if we can make it.
Yeah. So it started from the ingredients, I guess, studying the ingredients, the flavors and the aromas.
In the cooking side.
In the cooking side.
Right.
And then that jumped to, I guess, alcoholic beverages.
And if you think about it too, like, you're at home and you're interested in obviously Korean culture, Korean history, cooking in general. A lot of that is going to have to do with fermentation.
Right.
You have your panchan, you have your kimchis, and then you get a cookbook and or a kimchi recipe book, and you're like, you put the monge and the kimchi. Is this going to turn out all right? Or how do I make the gat kimchi a little bit more spicy? And how can I play with this? And then the fermentation, and then fermentation to alcohol, and it just kept kind of building over there.
The fermentation process is a very, very complex process when it comes to kimchi as well as makgeolli, Korean rice wine. Now, you did mention something about becoming a certified traditional Korean alcohol sommelier, and as I was doing a little bit of research, I read that it's quite difficult. It's difficult to obtain that certificate. Could you maybe walk us through the process? I mean, step by step, what are the steps that you had to take?
I think obviously for me it was a little bit more difficult. There's one thing, it's one thing to say that you're able to speak a language, right? And it's another thing to be able to read and write. It's another thing to be able to listen to a lecture from a doctorate level. Right. And then it's another thing to be able to take a test. Like if you sit down and look at test questions, it doesn't make it's like
the questions are hard.
The questions are using grammatical structures that we don't use in everyday speaking patterns, and there's a lot of hanja just thrown in there because smart people like to show that they're smart, and for someone like me, it's like how do I approach this, right? I sit there, I'm looking at a 30 question test, and they're like, you have 30 minutes to do this. I'm like, that's 1 minute per question. It'll take me a minute to read through this. But so it was something that I really had to prepare for, just the language barrier there to get above a social level and more into the scholarly side of it, specific to fermentation, brewing history, and the specific verbiage that they use. But aside from that, you do have to study a lot of history. You have to enjoy it, and then you have to subject yourself to tastings.
Right.
If you can imagine.
Oh my goodness, that is very difficult.
You start off with like 4 in front of you, and by the time, towards the end of your program, your professor looks at you and says, we're a little bit behind, so we're going to do 12 today. And then you come in 2 days later, you're just now recovering. Like, we have to do 24. And you're like, I'm not going to remember any of this. Sit there and take your notes.
So it's a lot of preparing and studying. It must have taken a long time. How long did it take you to actually obtain the certificate?
The program, depending on where you're studying, is not as long as you would expect. It can be as short as 3 months. Several times a week. And that's what I started with.
All right. So I guess it would be a good time to, help our viewers have a better understanding of what exactly a traditional Korean alcohol sommelier does. What kinds of work? I mean, what kind of work does it involve, being a traditional Korean alcohol sommelier?
So somms, they choose different areas to work in. Some of them would choose to be in the service industry, which would mean you'd work at a hotel or an upper-end restaurant, fine dining, something like that, which I've done over the last year. And then you're running a service, you're creating a beverage list, you do a lot of tastings, you work with the chefs in order to find the perfect pairing, the fit. So they're mad scientists in the kitchen, right? They're always creating new things. They're as passionate about cooking as I am about building this list of alcohols that I know. And then you collaborate. And the chef says, okay, I want to make this sauce, and I want to throw this in here, and I found this wild flower, and I want you to taste it. And then you go into it, and then you create a pairing. And other sommeliers, they would do consulting, something like that. Like put together a full list of what's available and what might fit for your place.
I understand that you travel across Korea. You have visited so far many, many parts of Korea, including breweries, many breweries. And I'd like you to tell us about that. Have you visited every single brewery? Because I know...
Impossible.
Impossible,
Absolutely
right?
impossible. It's quite the rabbit hole. And you start down it, and you start at a few places, and you think, like, I'm doing it. And then you shake hands with master brewer grandma here, and she says, let me introduce you to a couple of my friends, and you sit down and you have a drink, and then you have 7 more places you have to go to, and it never ends. And there are hundreds of breweries around the country. So there's not enough time to visit them all.
How do these breweries, I mean, what do they look like? Makgeolli breweries. I'm very curious.
I've been to a few that were, like a 500-year-old hanok in the middle of the countryside, 3rd-generation family. They're still brewing out of a sojukori or a kosori.
Which is?
It's, traditionally in Korea, you have the ongi that looks like an hourglass, and there's a little spout on the side.
So we're talking about these
항아리s,
gigantic
like
jars.
jars, like
Yeah.
a clay pot. That would be a sojukgori or a gosori in Jeju. I've been to places like that. I've been to places that were, grandma's house, and she just set it up on the second floor. I've been to places that are container boxes, like literally a container box.
So we're talking about small and very big breweries.
Yeah.
And the harmonies, of course.
Harmonies, of course.
Yeah. I am sure that our viewers right now are very curious. Now, we are going to take a quick break right now, and then as we get our stage prepared, we're going to get the chance to try out the makgeolli that Dustin has brought with him. He's brewed it at home himself, and we do have a selection of other types of Korean alcohol, so that is to come in just a bit. I'm ready when you're ready.
Excellent, let's do it.
So everything is set, and we have some makgeolli and Korean alcohol right in front of us. Now, Dustin has brought with him makgeolli that he brewed at home, so we'll be talking about that, as well as some Korean alcohol that's perfect for special occasions, as well as year-end parties and the New Year's season. So I'm very excited. Show us through. First of all, can we talk about the makgeolli that you brought with you today?
Of course. So I've been brewing for about 9 years, just as a hobby. It's very cost-effective. Rice is not as expensive as most people think, and it's water and nuruk, right? 3 ingredients.
Nuruk.
Nuruk.
So rice, water, and nuruk.
Right. Nuruk is the yeast that we're using to ferment the alcohol, and it's a bit different in Korean traditional brewing of sours than it is in other parts of the world, where sometimes, like if you want to brew a wine or a beer or something like that, you say a champagne, you're just going to call up the yeast lab and say, hey, I want champagne yeast number 234.
Okay.
And you get that in a little packet and you shake it into
I tried that with beer once.
Okay, your little home kits and things like that, right? You get a little dry packet. So that generally is one type of yeast that they've made into, it's standardized in a laboratory.
So you know what it's going to taste like.
You know what it's going to taste
You're
like.
ordering what you want. Right?
If you have some experience with brewing, you know what it did last time, you know what it's going to do this time. You're following a recipe, right? But with nuruk, it's like either wheat or rice-based, and you pasteurize it. But then you're capturing wild yeast and putting it into the wheat or rice substrate, and making a nuruk. So if you can imagine the wild yeasts that are living everywhere, I mean there's yeast all around here right now, are all going to have their own temperament, because they prefer to live on that. They produce their own aromas and their own flavors.
So we have the ingredients that we need to make makgeolli. I mean, this is all about the fermenting process, which is one of the most important things when making makgeolli. So could you tell us about the fermenting process, how long it takes, what is done?
It's different for every recipe, and obviously it's different depending on the time of year because of the temperature. If you're not doing it in a wine fridge or a controlled environment, you're at the mercy of the climate gods. Which is why we tend to brew a lot in autumn. Because the yeast prefer those types of temperatures. In the summer, you would throw a lot of nuruk into your recipe, so that you get a faster fermentation, so that it doesn't become vinegar, right? So you can keep there are all these little twists and tweaks you can do over the course of a year to keep your cup full. And
you've been doing it for 9 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is makgeolli. Curious to find out what it tastes like. So what do we do here? Do we have to strain it? We do have.
We'll strain it out. Traditionally, we'd have like a big bamboo thing with like all this. But my kitchen at home. This is a small operation. I'm not running a factory. I'm not a master brewer. I'm a somm. So what I'm thinking is the easiest way to go about it is just take a double strainer, fine mesh on the bottom, coarse on the top. Pour a little bit of this guy in. This is the rice mash. And get this guy in here, just like that. And this can take, depending on how big your batch is, and I'm doing something on this micro level right now, just to taste. You smell it?
Yes, I do.
How is it?
It smells very good.
So we're just gonna That's good enough for our purposes right now. Set that off to the side.
How would you describe, or how would you, I guess, explain to someone this aroma of makgeolli? It's very difficult.
A lot of them are different. The recipes that I tend to kind of try and work with the ratios that I've played with over the years, I hope that they're citrusy.
Citrusy.
And slightly earthy. Your glass full.
Oh my, all of that. And as I look into this, we only have a little bit of makgeolli.
I like to enjoy the first glass, fresh squeezed.
And tastes different?
It doesn't taste different, but the viscosity is different, right? So if you squeeze it that hard, it's going to have the viscosity, the texture of say, like a light yogurt.
Oh, wow.
And I want mine to be just a little bit. So we're not going to push this down, but if I had the time, then yes, I would strain it out. I would push it down. I would let it sit for about a week until the lighter stuff came to the top, and then the rice sediment went to the bottom, and then that would be a cheongju or something like that.
All right, yes, it does look like yogurt. It looks like yogurt, yes.
Shall we?
Okay. So now, do I get to taste your makgeolli? Can I smell?
Let's do it, of course, of course.
It smells so good.
It's like 11 in the morning. Here we go.
All right. And a little bit here.
We have quite a bit to taste. When you pour, you always want to have at least a minimum pour. You don't have to drink all of it, but just so that you can get the full aroma. This came out a lot thicker than I had expected.
Yes, it's quite thick. Okay.
Shall we?
Shall we?
Yeah, you take the pretty one.
Oh, is that prettier?
It is. I'll take
Thank
the one
you.
with the splash on it.
So is there a way to drink makgeolli?
Just in my opinion, as with most alcohols, it's best enjoyed first with your olfactory senses, your nose, the aroma. So give it a swirl.
Just as we do with wine?
Just with wine. Sometimes it matters a great deal. There's a huge difference in the aroma and in the flavor if you're enjoying it in a wine glass. Other times I've brewed with that particular recipe, it doesn't open up, it doesn't, and so it's particular to each alcohol that you're drinking. You kind of have to play around with it a bit. So this one is earthy, right?
This is earthy.
This is earthy.
What is
kind of earthy, like kind of like if you were walking through the forest and it rained for the first time in a while.
There we go.
And then you got the rain on the trees. That kind of. Let's do it.
네.
But there's a citrus in the front. Very bright. Lemony almost, right? Like lemon custard.
It's very citrusy. Oh,
and
wow.
here it gets a little bit of pine. Almost like pine
I don't know
needle.
how you do it with the it's citrusy, the pine.
And now it's drying out. It's not juicy anymore.
This is really good.
It's off dry.
I think I could finish that today, if only it weren't for the show.
We'll leave it here for you.
Okay, so now that we have tried your home-brewed makgeolli, I guess we could set our glasses down. I do have one quick question, though. As you've mentioned, this makgeolli seems to be a lot thicker than the makgeolli that we get, say we go to a store to grab some makgeolli. What's the difference? This is a lot thicker than the ones we
This is fresh squeezed. So if you can imagine an orange juice as well.
Oh, okay.
You squeeze an orange, it has the pulp in it. And if you were to let that settle, then the pulp sinks to the bottom, and then you'd have something. And it's just, if I were to have a week to just let this sit, it would become as clear as this one here. A month and longer. So and then it wouldn't be a takju anymore. It wouldn't be a makgeolli. It would be a cheongju or a yakju.
Okay. Now we want to get to these drinks over here, Korean alcohol as well. Could you maybe let's set these over here for a while. So tell us, do we have wine in front of us? Is it rice wine? Is it soju? Is it makgeolli? What do we have in front of us here?
This is like, the many debates that can be sparked just from those terms.
Okay.
Rice wine. Wine is technically a fruit-based, right? And we're not dealing with fruit here, which is also very unique to take a grain and to produce sugars from a grain. Rice doesn't have sugars in it. If you take a grape and you set it on this table, it'll become alcohol. It won't be good. It's not going to be the nice wine that you want after with it. But it will become some form of alcohol because it has sugars and it has yeast on the outside, right? Sure. If you take rice, steamed rice, and set it on the table, I guarantee you it won't become alcohol. It'll become a science project. It'll be terrible. So to take a carbohydrate and figure out how to produce sugars, and then take those sugars in a step process with the same yeast without squeezing it out, changing it, and introducing some sugar or something else is something that Korea figured out historically very fast.
Yes.
So some of the recipes, I think the one on the furthest left there, that one's considered a sogokju.
Sogokju.
And a sogokju is a style of cheongju, yakju, so the clear alcohol.
Okay.
And sogokjus have been around for 1,500 years. We can actually look in historical documents and find recipes that are 1,500 years old.
That's amazing.
So this little process was cracked pretty early on in Korean history, so we've had a lot of time to practice and play with these flavors. And some of these are makgeollis, some of these are yakjus, that one's a sogokju. In the center, this would be considered a takju, but you can see it becoming...
Right. We see that it's clear. Right, it's clear up here.
It's clearing up, so on the top that would be the cheongju. And you mix it again.
So the clear part is cheongju.
cheonghada, to be transparent, right?
I see. So this was hogokju. This would be a takju because it's not clear. This.
Yakju and cheongju.
Yakju, cheongju.
We can use those words interchangeably, and they're both basically the same thing. So it's the clear spirit, the clear alcohol that is settled above the top of the takju.
Okay. I mean, I think a lot of people are much more obviously, I guess more comfortable or familiar with wine. But this is very interesting because even when we talk about Korean alcohol, we're talking about Korean rice wines and how each of them are different. I wish we had all desserts and dishes we could try with each and every one of these alcoholic drinks.
Let's do a pairing.
Maybe we could do it some other time, yeah?
Certainly.
Sure. All right, so I think we could wrap it up right now. I do have tons and tons of more questions to ask you, but perhaps we could set our chairs back and then talk more in just a bit.
Okay.
Thank you, Dustin.
Thanks.
So here we are back in the studio, comfortably sitting in our chairs. I do want to get to this question about how you are developing and managing a traditional Korean, is it a pairing course?
It's a pairing, yes.
A pairing course at a restaurant. So tell us about this.
So we work with the chefs, and the chefs develop the menu, and then I'm responsible for pairing the courses that are going out over the course of that evening. Where I spent the last year working, the menu changes, and it's difficult to keep up with, but it's a wonderful challenge. So as I taste the menus that the chefs produce, I'm constantly having to study and create this mental map of flavors that work well together, voracious tasting notes, pairing notes, and then we sit down and we say, okay, this is what we're going to do with this menu this month. And then we'll train them to be educated on the alcohol. So all the knowledge that I've amassed studying about the master brewers, the history of the alcohol, the flavors themselves, why they work with the pairing, then we sit down in front of house and we talk about them so that the staff are also able to communicate with the guests passionately about this is why we've chosen these alcohols. This is the fun of it. This is kind of the pizzazz.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of exciting work. Now, since we are also on the topic of food, I mean, especially in Korea, I'm sure in other parts of the world as well. I mean, we have 4 distinct seasons, and not every season, but almost every 2 to 3 months. I mean, there are, ingredients, like fish, for example, that are in season. Seafood that's, very tasty during the month of March, say, for example. And then in April, it's a different kind of seafood, for example. What is it? I know you love Korean food, so just a few questions. what do you like about Korean food? What do you think about Korean food? And how would you describe the tastes of Korean cuisine?
Oh, that's difficult. The last question there, the taste of Korean cuisine. Korean food is so dynamic, right? When you first get here, you're wondering why most soups are either brown or red, and then once you get down into it, once you let yourself go into the rabbit hole, and you have your first hongeo experience or sannakji. But it's so strange. You commit yourself to experiencing something, and you'll learn to love it.
Yeah. Hongeo, I heard it's an acquired taste.
It
I haven't
is.
learned how to eat hongeo
It
yet,
is.
but yeah.
And I'm not going out for it like twice a week or something. Like, do you want kamjatang or hongeo? And hongeo, like just running to the. No, it's a sometimes kind of.
Well, unfortunately, we are almost out of time, so I'm going to have to ask you my final question.
Let's do it.
Which is your future plans, your plans that you have ahead in promoting Korean, traditional Korean alcohol to the world, and also just personal plans. What's next for you?
I think for me right now, taking a step back from the 60, 70 hour commitment, and then taking the extra time to work with some people that I can really learn from, and then take that knowledge, and then I would like to participate in projects to really promote Korean alcohol. There's a lack of English contents for it at the present time. I want to help with that, build the basis for that, and I need to keep learning. So there are too many places to go, too many more grandmas to raise the glass with, and just take an amount of time to really study, focus, build my body of knowledge, and work on promoting.
Okay, I'd like to thank you once again for joining us today and for sharing your stories with us. I had a wonderful time.
Thank you, Sura.
감사합니다.
아닙니다.
So today we had a wonderful chance and a talk with Dustin WESSA. We talked about traditional Korean wines, traditional Korean alcohol, and much more. We wish him the best in achieving his goals and also in promoting our Korean alcohol to the world. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you again next time.